All right, time to make a video that I have waited an entire month to make. I have been wanting to make this video for so long, but I've been so busy. I mean, look at all my notes. You know when I'm making notes, it's going to be good, right? This is not really defending the EU. This is more of defending the EU movement. I have a lot of quotes here that I'm going to read. But first off, I just want to say that it's kind of weird, Star Wars fandom is. I've never seen so much hate toward Expanded Universe fans. You don't see this in any other genre. I mean, if you look at like fan sites like Star Trek, I should say. Star Trek, if you go online, a few of you, we've talked about this because I kind of check Star Trek every once in a while. I am kind of a Star Trek fan, not as big as I am a Star Wars fan, but I do like Star Trek and follow it. And online there, if you go and complain about the new movies from J.J. Abrams, guess what? People are okay with that. They either understand your comment or they agree with you. It's okay to have disagreements. I'm not saying there's no heated arguments there, because there are some heated arguments on Star Trek, within Star Trek forums and fans. But overall, it's okay to not like new stuff. Where in the Star Wars, fandom, you get crucified if you don't like the new stuff. If you don't love every new book, if you don't love every, movie that came out. In fact, I have friends who don't really like the new stuff that much, but I think they're afraid to say that to their fans who do love the new stuff, because you don't talk bad about the new stuff or something bad will happen to you. It's kind of weird. I've never seen this in any other fandom. Again, Star Trek. You can make fun of the new movie coming out. It's everywhere. Every Star Trek fan's doing it. Now, some fans are rushing and defending it and saying, hey, it's not all that bad. But it's okay. You have people who are like, no, it's going to suck. And people are like, well, yeah, it could suck. Yeah, you got some points there. You can't do that in the Star Wars fan world, because everyone heaps hate on you. You become the new, Facebook Hitler or something. It's really weird how much hate they have. But this boils down to a lot of the fan sites that basically kind of like to stir up the pot, or they're on the side of crucifying EU fans too, which kind of shocks me. I'm going to mention names here. I usually don't, and I'm not trying to call out people or, get into a YouTube war. No, I don't even care about that. They can talk about me as much as they want on their Facebook page. I'll never check it because I don't have Facebook. I'm just saying that this is people that I've seen say things that I don't agree with. We've talked about Club J in the past. They've said some negative things toward the EU in the past. Honestly, in the most recent posts I've seen from them, they've been kind of fair toward the EU movement. I still think they should take down that saying on their website that says, we're fans of Star Wars, particularly the Expanded Universe. Not really. You're more fans of the new stuff, which is fine. That's totally fine, because that's what's out, that's what's hot, that's what's new, and that's what everyone else and their own mother is reporting about within the Star Wars fandom. So why not go for what's popular news? I go for the unpopular news on my podcast, the stuff that people do not talk about as much within the fandom. But I don't believe that Club Jade is a big supporter of the Expanded Universe anymore. I'm not saying they don't hate it. I'm sure they still love it. I'm sure a lot of people over there still love it. But for the most part, that's not what they're about anymore. They've changed. They need to change their motto or whatnot. But for instance, they have had some great quotes come out in the past. In fact, look at this one from April 11th, 2011 from Club J. It said, Star Wars is a gigantic franchise with many different facets. You don't have to love every single piece of it to be a fan. And I think it's unrealistic to expect everyone to do that. They said it. Look at April 11th, 2011. What? Yes, I totally agree with you, Club J. Now I hope that you share that or repost that, post you made back then. Reshare it with all these other departments. Eric Geller at Force.net, he really needs to see something like that, because he obviously doesn't agree with you. It's amazing what they said. Listen to this. They keep going on. It says there's a tendency in fandom for some fans to act as gatekeepers of sorts, a mindset that's more often destructive and off-putting than it's not. Now, what is a gatekeeper behavior, you might ask? Because that's what they say here. They said there's a lot of ways you could define it, but I think at its core, being a gatekeeper is trying to project and force your view of Star Wars, and then in parentheses, or whatever fandom you're in, that's a pretty universal concept, on to other fans. To a certain degree, I can understand why people do this. It says Star Wars is something that you love, and you want other people to experience and enjoy it the same way you did. This basically negates a lot of the arguments going on there. It's like, you have to like Episode 7. You have to do it, or you're not a Star Wars fan. If you don't like the new stuff, then you must not be a Star Wars fan. What? Or making fun of you got, people tell me all the time, you got to watch Episode 7, Matt. If you don't, you're not a Star Wars fan. I don't agree with that. Remember, I've said in the past, there is no hierarchy of fandom. And I believe the same is the case for people who choose not to experience the new canon. Now, I realize that there's a lot of people out there who are part of the EU movement who read and love and watch the new stuff, and I'm totally fine with that. Remember, I don't care what you like, what your preferences are. We're a very diverse group, and I love that. But for some people, at some fan site, they just got to make fun of you. They got to hate on you. I mentioned Eric Gaylor at Force.net. Man, folks, don't worry about that. What he says, that whole site is in trouble. Actually, Forcecast actually stopped. It went dead, I think it was a month ago or whatnot. And it fell apart because of infighting within that group. The Force.net group is fighting. What? They fight within themselves. So there's just a lot of disruption and chaos going on there. So yeah, they're spitting hate at fans who don't think the same way they do. Oh no, you can't just love the expanded universe. You have to love all of Star Wars to be a Star Wars fan. No, I disagree with that. If all you love is the Old Republic, you're still a Star Wars fan. Matt, I don't care about all the other stuff. I just love the new Old Republic. I've heard from people who are in the EU movement who say, the only reason I'm for this is because I want to have more Old Republic stuff come out. I understand that, and that's totally fair. And he said, I don't even care about the new stuff. I don't care about the expanded universe. All I care about is Old Republic and any books and comics and whatnot that spawn from it. I want to see more books and comics from the Old Republic. Fair enough. You know, I can't argue with that. Now, do I think he's a lesser Star Wars fan than me? Do I think he's wrong for not wanting everything? No, I don't. But that's my common sense talking. What do I know? Other folks who've been kind of negative, and I think it's wrong for them to do so because they're in a position where they shouldn't be, is, I'm going to say it, Pablo Delgado. A lot of you have shown me a lot of his Twitter posts, and yes, he has kind of belittled and ridiculed EU fans for no reason. I really don't know what the purpose of is making fun of EU fans because they're Star Wars fans too. And shame on him because he is a well-known Lucasfilm representative, and he shouldn't be making those comments. You shouldn't be showing that sort of face toward the company. Now you could say, well, Matt, everyone at Lucasfilm's like that. I don't believe everyone at Lucasfilm's like that. Sure, you've heard things from Jennifer Heddle, kind of slightly calling EU fans not Star Wars fans. Let me explain before I go into any more detail, before you start quoting me on that. In a Twitter post that she made, she said, hey fans, tell us what you like to hear and we will try to see if we can do it. And then of course, EU fans were like, hey, more EU. She went, oh, you guys, thanks guys. No, that's above my pay grade. It's not my grade. It's almost like she was saying, no, I wasn't talking to you. They're not Star Wars fans too, Jennifer? I just don't think people who are in those positions at Lucasfilm should be making statements like that. They should be supportive of all sides, of people who love everything. Not just, if you don't love the new, then we're not interested in you. Which is definitely the impression that they're giving. And that is wrong. And finally, a third person who I think is really being in that gatekeeper position is Brian from Tashi Station. I've talked about him before. He got in an argument with a fan on his website, totally deleted the comments and everything, shut down everything. And he was very unfair, I thought, to the guy who was trying to defend the EU. Now, yeah, he had a bad experience in Dragon Con, which I even made a video about that. I said, yeah, if that's how that fan acted, that is totally inappropriate and should never have been done. I totally condemn that as well. But I think that one bad experience really screwed him up because he is doing nothing but mocking EU fans and really saying some awful stuff that I've heard. And maybe he's just letting that one experience just take over because I don't know if that's how he feels. In fact, there's a website that I found that made some great posts a couple of years ago that I want to read to you. The first one was from December 31st, 2012. And it's about someone coming to grips with the new Disney announcement that they were taking over Lucasfilm. And he says, I haven't yet fully worked out how I feel about the deal and the new films that are going to impact the expanded universe, something I hold very near and dear to me. All I know is that even with the new films and explicitly on the horizon, nothing is going to take away the books and stories I care about. He even suggests later on in this article about suggesting they have a parallel universe, like keeping Legends intact and continuing that story, which I agree with. Remember, I don't care if the expanded universe is non-canon. All I want is them to continue that canon on its own. Now, from this same website, and I'll give you the name of the website later on in the video, but I just want to read this stuff to you. From this same website, on January 2nd, 2013, the same person wrote this article. And he said, sequel trilogy fans need to grow up. All the excitement, all the speculation, all the angsting, all for something that really doesn't matter. It's absolutely baffling why so much thought and effort is being put into something so meaningless. It kills me to see people wasting their time on all of this because, come on, let's be perfectly honest, the sequel trilogy isn't real Star Wars. And he says, sure, there might be some high-profile names associated with things like Episode 7, Michael Arndt, who at the time was writing the script. He is not now. He was taken off the project by the all-knowing, all-powerful JJ, who said, I will write this. And it says, might be considered a good screenwriter, and a multitude of directors in consideration for the film might have solid credits to their names. At this point, JJ hadn't been attached to the project. But that doesn't change the fact that Episode 7, the sequel trilogy, is nothing more than a glorified, high-budget fan film. He said people are certain to object to lumping Episode 7 with more fan projects, but those people just have to deal with reality. What makes something Star Wars is George Lucas' involvement. Now, of course, you're saying that Lucas is involved. He gave his blessing to the new project and may have handed some new ideas over to have it be used. Keep in mind, though, just because he said it's okay to do a sequel trilogy and offered up some ideas doesn't mean he likes it or thinks it counts himself. Permission or not, unless Lucas is in the trenches doing the writing, directing, and producing, it's the same class as fan fiction. He said, let me see, but Lucasfilm is involved, you might add. Oh, that makes a real Star Wars, doesn't it? Yeah, but also they were involved with and approved both incarnations of Star Tours. You mean to tell me that a half-baked droid, once voiced by Pee Wee Herman, which is at the Disney World ride, counts as real Star Wars? Come on. Lucasfilm needs to do things to make money. Sometimes that means to give approval to things that they can use the Star Wars name so they can just do that. Employees to pay, new intellectual properties to design, and all that jazz. Consider it a necessary evil to preserve the things that count and do matter. Now, before you think, wow, who is this? This guy's great. He was basically writing this as an argument, as a joke, kind of like a farce, to throw it back against haters of the EU. Because haters of the EU said the same thing about the expanded universe. Well, George isn't writing it, so if he's not writing the books, then it's not true canon. He just gave some ideas to it, which we know that, we have proof of that. George approved everything that was done. Whatever, Lucasfilm has to make money. Well, what are they doing right now? They're doing this without George. Your main argument just got cut underneath you. Because now, using your logic and your arguments, the new stuff is not canon because it didn't come from George, which is what you've been saying all along. Now, this guy doesn't hate the new stuff. And in fact, I think he likes it now. But when he wrote this article, he was talking about, you know, this is how you EU haters sound when you try to convince us that the EU doesn't mean anything. It's meaningless, pointless. And he got like big backlash because he didn't explain that when he first posted it. So the next day, January 3rd, 2013, he had to go back and explain why he wrote the article. And then he went on. I'm skipping and kind of peeling off points. And again, I'm going to give you the website in just a moment here and who wrote all this, because it's the same person. He goes, the problem with this is that gatekeeping mentality ultimately results in exclusionary behavior. It's an extension of the true fan nonsense that drives me and other people crazy. In essence, the gatekeeper tries to police and screen other fans by using a set of ultimately arbitrary standards that they came up with on their own, which is true. I've had, actually I had a guy, I can't remember, it was a couple months ago, who actually said that all your points are wrong. There are no contradictions within the movies, and here's why. And he made up a bunch of stuff that doesn't have it. I said, dude, you just made up half of that. Or you said, well, that doesn't really matter, so we won't count that. Yeah, it does. That inconsistency does matter. What's the point? And he just made up his own rules. It's kind of weird. And then he started calling me illogical, even though he's the one making up stuff. It's his own viewpoint. It was kind of weird. But I agree with this person. Also, they said, within the context of Star Wars, you see countless different gatekeepers casting judgments on others. You're not a real fan if you don't like the prequel films. You're not a real fan if you don't like the sequel films. You're not a real fan. No, you shouldn't care so much about the books and comics. You shouldn't be so emotionally involved in Clone Wars. You shouldn't bother with the video games. The gatekeeper seeks to dictate who is a fan and how they should behave and enjoy fandom. As you can clearly see, that's ridiculous. How many EU fans have heard those very same arguments from people in the new canon? You're not a fan unless you watch the Rebels. You're not a fan unless you see the new stuff. You're not a fan unless you read the new books and comic books. Wow, this person's really putting the nail on the head, right? Also, he goes on. It says, in that piece, I took some of the most commonly used and infuriating arguments, rhetoric, and tone of the gatekeepers use to exclude and discourage those who are invested in the expanded universe, and turned them against the sequel trilogy. Obviously, the sequel trilogy is real and it counts, even though George Lucas has sold his stake in Lucasfilm and isn't down the trenches anymore. You would have to be deluded to think that it doesn't count and isn't real. But why then is it wrong to use those arguments against the sequel trilogy, but okay to use the same ones against the expanded universe or any other element of fandom? And I agree with that. I've even said that in past videos. All these haters who hated the EU, guess what? Your argument can be forced back on you because George Lucas isn't involved. So according to your standard, like George Lucas is the standard. He decides what's real. Really? Because he said that they're not using his script. They're not using his ideas. None of the new stuff came from George Lucas. None of it. But yet we're okay with that because Lucasfilm says it's canon. Lucasfilm also called the expanded universe canon 1 billion times. There's 1 billion quotes out there. I don't even argue that point anymore. It's like, Matt, I think the sun rises in the west, not the east. Well, just wake up one morning and find out for yourself that you're wrong. When people say, I don't think George, it wasn't never considered canon. Really? Well, read all the quotes from Lucasfilm. No. Lucasfilm doesn't get to decide. George gets to decide. Really? Because George isn't there in the new canon and he hasn't decided. And according to him, it's not his story. All right. That's why when a gatekeeper tells me that the expanded universe doesn't matter or it doesn't count, that there should be less of it. You're wasting your time on it. I get reflexively and perhaps irrationally upset. The expanded universe means a lot to me and has some very real, deep, personal reasons. I can tell you, you can't tell me that my love of the media tie-ins was a waste of time and that I'm silly for being so invested in them. It says, now, let me stop right there. You can't say that I'm being so silly being invested in them. Now, you look at these people who mock EU fans, like Eric Geller, like Brian from Tashi Station, like Pablo Delgado. And this guy is saying, hey, don't tell me that I'm silly for being so invested in them, which they are treating them as silly, they're just stupid people. Now he says, now turn it around, replace the words sequel trilogy with expanded universe, video games, prequel trilogy, original trilogy, and other elements of the fandom, and that's when you start using exclusionary arguments against other fans. They're liable to feel the same anger and sadness you did while reading that post, meaning his prior post. He said, don't play gatekeeper. You don't have to like everything that someone else does, but respect their right and enjoy any element of the fandom. With all the different issues that we view in the world, that means different things within Star Wars will speak to us more than others. Don't try to regulate how others experience and enjoy this universe because any arbitrary set of rules and standards can't and shouldn't fit everyone. I totally agree with you, Brian from Tashi Station. That's where you can read his articles from just a few years ago. The same person who is doing the exact opposite of what is said here. Now, I don't know Brian. He's probably a nice guy. I would love to meet Brian. And I'd love to ask him what's going on. Now, he even admits in one of these articles that he lets his, feelings get the best of him at times. Maybe he's not thinking clearly. Maybe that person who I can understand can be very irritating, who was at DragonCon, really turned him off of EU fans. And that's why he's been, belittling them a lot, mocking them. Well, according to this, Brian, you are a gatekeeper. And you shouldn't be one. Now, perhaps I am wrong. Perhaps I am misunderstanding this. Again, I don't know Brian. I really would like to meet him. I really think he can't be a bad guy because he wrote great stuff. He wrote some great stuff that I completely agree with. And the same thing, EU fans should never be like, well, expanded universe, that's better than anything you got out there. Well, yeah, in your opinion. Remember, in your opinion. It is. Not in everyone's opinion, in your opinion. In my opinion, the expanded universe will be better than anything else they put out there. But of course, I know that is my opinion. Doesn't make it fact. And we shouldn't hate people because they love the new Disney stuff. No, that's fine. If they love the old expanded universe and the new Disney canon, that's fine. It does not bother me at all. But we should all remember, don't be a gatekeeper. All right, well, you folks like long videos. I don't, because I hate hearing my voice run on and on and on, but here's your one. Hope you enjoyed it. See you later.